3 days later, a power company employee working at the Rainbow Dam spotted something on a hill across the river. He decided to go check it out. When he arrived at the spot, he found a car that had plunged down the hillside. The vehicle appeared to be caught up on some brush. Police and crime scene technicians were contacted and responded to the scene. A check on the vehicle's tags revealed the car was registered to missing 27-year-old Susan Galowy. Sergeant Anderson made his way down the hill. Through the window, he observed a key in the ignition. There didn't appear to be anyone inside, but on the back of the vehicle, he noticed streaks of blood. There was also what appeared to be a footprint on the trunk. Then Anderson took a closer look inside the car. The rear cushion of the back seat had pulled away from the trunk area, and at that point, I could see a body inside the trunk of the car. The woman matched the description of Susan Galowy, and it appeared she had been murdered. Police towed up the vehicle and began searching for clues. Inside the car, technicians found large blood smears on the front passenger seat. They also recovered several shards of broken green glass stained with blood. The exterior of the vehicle was thoroughly photographed. The victim's body was transported to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. The lack of evidence found near the car led police to believe that she had been murdered elsewhere and then brought to the hillside. A dog was brought in to track the victim's scent. A mile from the car, he alerted to a partially dug hole. More of the victim's blood was found. It appeared the suspect brought the woman to this spot, finished the kill, and then attempted to bury the victim, but for some reason gave up. The medical examiner confirmed the victim was in fact Susan Galowy. Pieces of green glass from a 16-ounce soda bottle were found embedded in her skull and neck. They had severed her carotid artery, and as a result, Susan had bled to death. Now detectives had to find out who had murdered Susan Galowy and why. But with few clues and no obvious suspects, they knew it would not be easy. Building the case, police in Great Falls, Montana, had few clues in the murder of 27-year-old Susan Galowy. The young woman had been brutally beaten with a soda bottle, placed in the trunk of her car, and then sent down a steep embankment. No usable prints were found on the glass or in the victim's vehicle. Hoping to identify a suspect, investigators released details of the crime through the media. A short while later, they got a tip. A man stationed at the local Air Force base believed he had information. He said that on the night Susan disappeared, he had seen her fiancé, Craig Smith. Smith had come by the barracks in the early morning hours. He noticed his friend was carrying a bundle of dirty clothing. He also noticed a gash on Smith's hand. Smith told him he had cut it with a knife. He was on his way to see the medic for treatment and asked his friend for a ride home after that was done. Smith had also told the airman that he had been out drinking with friends and got stranded. In fact, he asked his friend to keep the story quiet because his fiancée Susan Galowy wouldn't have been happy about it. The airman's story contradicted Craig Smith's claim that on the night of the disappearance, he had gone to bed soon after Susan had dropped him off. Sergeant Ken Anderson was suspicious. It was almost as though Craig was lying about something, and all of a sudden he became the main suspect rather than the grieving fiancé. The convenience store police looked to corroborate Smith's story. They located the medic who had bandaged his cut hand. He confirmed that Craig Smith had come in to be treated for a cut in the early morning hours of October 23rd. But the medic recalled thinking that the wound was consistent with having been caused by a jagged edge rather than a knife blade, as Smith suggested. Though incriminating, the information fell short of proving that Craig Smith was a killer. Now, looking to tie the suspect to the crime scene, police canvassed the nearby area. A clerk at a convenience store remembered seeing Smith and Susan Galowy the night she disappeared. And according to the clerk, they seemed to be arguing when they came into the store. They bought a few bottles of soda and then left. The clerk showed the officer the type of soda purchased by the couple. They were 16-ounce bottles made of green glass, identical to the glass that had killed Susan Galowy. The information was enough for police to obtain a warrant to search Craig Smith's residence. Soil analysis breakthrough. The suspect continued to deny any involvement in Susan's death. He admitted he and Susan had been in the convenience store that night. And he also admitted that in the past he had hung out at the area where her car was later found. But Smith denied ever being at the spot where the partially dug hole was found, the place police believe was the kill site. Detectives collected the clothing he wore on the night of Susan's disappearance, but the items had been recently cleaned. Police realized their only hope would be to link Smith to the sneaker print recovered from the trunk of Susan's car. They collected a single pair of muddy shoes. An examination revealed that the shoes seized from Craig Smith were the same size and the soles had the same pattern as those collected from the vehicle, but that alone wouldn't be enough to prove murder. He had driven her car a number of times. His footprint was in an irregular place on the trunk, but it could have been there. Police would have to physically place him at the kill site, and all they had to do that was some dirt on the bottom of Smith's shoes. It was our belief that if he had been standing in the area of the kill site, he would have picked up soil. It was very sandy and totally different from the mud and soil at the area where the car was pushed over. Investigators collected soil samples from various locations where the suspect claimed to have been on the night of Susan's disappearance. They also collected samples from the spot where they believed the murder took place. All of the soil was sent to the University of Montana for analysis. There, geologist and mineralogist Jack Mcrady worked the case. I was to examine crime scene soils, and there was an open burial site. They wanted to compare the soil that was present on the suspect's shoe. Mcrady observed that the soil samples taken from the bottom of Smith's shoe contained tiny pieces of glass, probably from broken bottles. A microscopic analysis also revealed that the sample contained bits of ash that were consistent with having been produced by copper. The samples collected from Craig Smith's yard and from the path he had walked to the base had no such ash. In fact, only samples taken from the crime scene had both the tiny shards of glass and the copper ash. And the reason seemed simple. A few hundred yards from the crime scene on the banks of the Missouri River was the site of a copper smelting plant. Mcrady determined that it was the only area in the county where copper ash appears in the soil. Craig Smith had been at the kill site, something he had previously denied.